6:01, public meeting to order for Monday, January 3rd, 2022, in the elementary school board. Start with a gender review and disposition. I guess we're going to move item 5, privilege of the floor, number 2, to after the budget review, to welcome public comment. Anything else?
Nope.
Approval of the minutes from December 6th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. And privilege of the floor, number 1. Does anyone want to speak on Zoom?
Jenny. All set, Jenny. Yep.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. I just had a budget question. It wasn't clear to me when I was looking at the budget draft 2 online, but I am a big proponent of the capital reserve fund. And right now, the way we had it set up was, hold on, my children are being hard.
Yeah, go on.
The way it was set up was there was never actually a burden on the taxpayers because it was just extra money. And if there was extra money, we would keep $50,000 for the capital reserve. But from what I remember, I think it was from the November meeting, so I didn't make it to December, we're not doing that again, and it needs a new, like a new vote for it. So I'm not really sure if that's the way it is. If it's the same, then ignore me. But I guess I'm confused about it. And I would say that if people are concerned because the capital reserve can only be used for maintenance, I know there are restrictions in education capital reserves that are different from like the town capital reserves, but it would be great if we could still have that resource that is, sort of a tucked away fund for when we need it.
I can respond to that real quick. Jenny, we are reviewing the warrant articles tonight, and that warrant article is in the draft warrant, so we'll be reviewing that about how much of the unreserved would go into the capital reserve as well. So that's something that's being discussed tonight, actually.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Anyone else?
Nope.
Principals report?
I'm going to try to have a brief principals report tonight. We have 395 students enrolled, which is holding steady. We did have some students come in. We also had some students leave, but we're right under 400. The theme for the month of January is hope, and we are exploring how goal setting and positivity relate to hope, which is appropriate for the new year. Want to give you a couple of updates on curriculum instruction and assessment. We are getting very good feedback on the addition of handwriting without tears and actually teaching formation of letters. Also, there's a group working collaboratively, 6 PES teachers and about 10 others from other SAU schools working to choose our next reading program. And there's a smaller group working to develop a full literacy plan for Plymouth Elementary School. So we're working very hard on thinking about the most important components of literacy and assessment and how we manage that here. We are also developing our spring assessment dates for SAS. We're looking ahead to all of our spring assessments. Wanted to let the board know that we have booked Media Power Youth, which is a New Hampshire organization, to come in and present to 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, each grade individually, to talk about healthy social media use. That's free in the state of New Hampshire, but unknown to a lot of schools at this point. They're going to run a workshop model here during the day and then have some activities in the evening for adults to think hard about how youth are using social media. For student shout outs, I wanted to shout out all of the kindergarten and first graders. One of the great highlights of December was the concert, and these little kindergartners and first graders who had never participated in a concert were about as cute as it comes. They were the most wiggly group I've ever seen. We could not even put them one step up on the risers. They would have wiggled themselves right off of the risers. So they did a fantastic job. And I wanted to shout out Ellie Grazioso in 3rd grade and Ella Price in 4th grade because the two of them won CARE Awards in December. And then for teachers and staff, I wanted to commend Jake Stevens for the concerts, K1 and the 2nd and 3rd grade concert. I also wanted to thank Brian Dutil, Brian Sheehan, Jess Marinowski, Christine Helm, Kelly Carey for the for Santa's helpers, being Secret Santas in the community before Christmas. We did a major delivery through our cars on the snow day. So we waited until the afternoon when the snows were clear and were able to make Christmas happen for about 100 kids. So pretty phenomenal. Also wanted to thank Ann Doyle and Ellen Hand for the staff breakfast and ugly sweater swap before the break. It was really fun. And pretty incredible shout out for Beth Wilkie, Jenny Lee, and Amy McKenney for organizing winter program. It's going to happen and it's going to be fantastic. So thank you to the 3 of them for working so hard. Wanted to let everyone know that there is a meeting, a PTA meeting this week at 6 p.m. Via Zoom. The link is available on the website. We hope to see you all there. PTA is very active, and but we're always willing to have more and welcome new members. Want to thank the parents for all the holiday treats that came for the parties before Christmas, and that was wonderful. Especially would like to thank the Johnson family who brought in healthy treats for all the staff and did a really amazing spread for staff to thank them before Christmas. And would like to ask parents to send in snack donations of granola bars for winter program. So a granola bar in the pocket can make a big difference for helping a kid get through a cold day. So we are taking donations. I want to skip down to facilities and let you know that all the classrooms were rekeyed over break, so we have simplified the keys in this building. Some minor plumbing issues were addressed, and there was some significant cleaning that was accomplished. So thank you to the custodians and facilities crew for doing that. Upcoming, we have winter program that starts this Thursday for K to 5, and we are planning for the play. So some things to look forward to. And that is all I have. Kelly?
Yes, I'm going to be actually very brief. Our 5-6 basketball teams finished up at the holiday break, and I just wanted to thank both Brandon Pike and Stephanie Pike. They took on both those teams. I know Brandon had 20 5th and 6th grade boys. Trying to get into a basketball game is a feat just in itself. So they both did a great job. Kids improved a lot, had a lot of fun, and I appreciate their efforts and coming in and helping us out. So it was a good season for them. Our 7th and 8th grade basketball teams just started up before the break. They opened up with Winnisquam. Both teams lost there. Traveled up to Kennett, and both teams got a win. So we're 1-1 right now, and this week they will travel to Holderness tomorrow and to Moultonborough on Thursday. The Nordic ski team, hopefully the snow that we have stays, and they can ski on Saturday at Sandwich Fairgrounds. They open up. And unfortunately for the wrestlers, we've lost our first 2 matches off of the schedule, one to weather and another one to our opponent's COVID issues. So they will be opening up on January 11th, if luck will have it. And otherwise, they're all doing great. So good numbers there as well. And nothing much to report on the safety front, other than we'll have our first meeting of the year this coming Wednesday.
I do want to make a comment that I did see on Facebook that the teachers and you went to the hospital and did little things. That was nice.
Thank you. It was great. We did gift bags for some front-end staff at the hospital, so, yeah. It was. Thank you.
Okay, discussion items, budget, second draft.
Sure, so we went through, I gave you budget draft 2 in front of you. Last meeting, we had read through every line. We will not do that this time.
Thank you very much.
I did take out the 232,000 that the board had decided on the last meeting, so if you jump to page, sorry. Jump to page 11.
What category is this, like page numbers or?
It was the building improvement services.
Like 20?
What number?
2,500?
Oh, sorry, 4,600, 450 is where we changed it to $1.
Got it.
Yep. So page 10 of 11, you'll see,
Our numbers, you can't see.
Yeah, you can't see the numbers.
Give us the account number.
I'm sorry.
Account
Look, so if you go to line 419, okay? You're up 59,260, which is a significant decrease from the last time, so your appropriations are up 0.6% on the budget side. That's just the appropriations. If you skip to the revenue page, which is 2 pages later, we had talked about, I have Dan here tonight because we had talked about moving or committing some funds to the unreserved fund balance in the right-hand column to get the overall number down, because if you see at the bottom there, the change in district assessment percentage is at about 4.09%. So that's just because we're down in revenue a little bit. And Dan had some ideas that the high school uses sometimes to make sure it doesn't have that much of a tax impact if we commit some of the funds now, just given what the tax rate is this year. So I think, Dan?
So last year, with your funds unspent at the end of the year, you voted to retain $271,993. That's what's referred to as your retained fund balance, as opposed to the unreserved fund balance. If you, on that revenue sheet in the left-hand column, the first number of revenue is the unreserved fund balance from last year, which went to reduce this year's tax impact. You could commit any portion of last year's retained fund balance, that $271,000, to be unreserved at the end of this current year, and that would then slot that money into the space in the top right-hand column, which would immediately reduce the bottom line number that you're currently contemplating as a projected increase in local assessment. I wouldn't necessarily commit 100% of the $271,000, because you may have some unanticipated expenses this year. On the other hand, there's another unanticipated revenue this year in the form of a return of surplus from Health Trust, your health insurance program. They returned money to each of the school districts this year based on last year's underutilization of the claims that they collected. So what that meant was that approximately $105,000 came to the Plymouth School District. A portion of that was returned to the employees in the pro rata share that they participate in the cost of the health insurance. All employees, all people who were employees last year anyway, whether they're still an employee or not, got their checks mid-December. It was returned to them in the form of a reimbursement. But the bottom line on that portion of revenue is there's about $81,000 of unanticipated revenue to the school district for the current year. And while I wouldn't, once again, I wouldn't necessarily commit that portion, but might give you a comfort level in committing a larger portion of the unretained, the retained fund balance from last year. By way of example, if you were to commit by a vote of the board $240,000 of that 271 that was retained last year, you'd still have the other 30,000 that was retained last year, plus this health trust income to deal with unanticipated expenses this year. but it would drop that bottom line of increased assessment to zero.
So you're saying if we put it up here, in this part here,
You commit a portion to the unreserved fund balance, yeah.
then this balance is out here.
While still retaining some flexibility because of the other incomes that you have.
Seems wise.
Yeah, that's an independent decision to be made by voters.
Tyler, are you saying that we have the CBA, we still have to, in negotiations, correct? Impact?
Yeah, so that, whatever that would be a separate warrant article.
Are you thinking that the amount that you just said, 240, is a good amount, or is it, do you think that's
Well,
reasonable?
I think anytime you can project a balanced budget or a neutral effect on taxes for your operating budget,
Right.
I can't see how that wouldn't be better than an increase. You know, I mean,
No, I agree, I just meant what the actual number.
yeah, so once again, if you're gonna stay firm with the current proposed spending plan, which when you take into account the other projected revenues, calls for an increase in local taxation of $239,000, et cetera, dollars, I think it would be a very compelling argument to make, to commit the same number of your retained fund balance from last year to neutralize that effect. And you'll still have some flexibility because of the health trust income that was unplanned, or the additional, that other $31,000 that you retained. So you still have some flexibility, and obviously, and it may make a more compelling argument for the other warrant articles that you may choose to have on the warrant, whether they be a CBA agreement or something else, to stand on their own for the public to vote on, without having to consider any other increase that may be coming out.
So I move that we do that. The 240.
Did you say you're?
I move that I'm making a motion. Yes.
Okay.
And what was that number, Dan?
I would suggest that an effective motion would be to commit a number from the retained fund balance from last year equal to the projected net increase.
What Dan just said.
Did you get
So
that?
moved.
Did you get it in the notes?
Jenny, if you need help with that afterwards in the minutes, let me know. I'm sure you got it.
I will second Mike's motion. Nobody else.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So with the appropriations and the revenue page, there would be no increase
No increase in net assessment.
in net assessment. Yep. The other thing, what was that? Is that from Zoom? Oh, sorry. You just, if you're comfortable with the budget, to vote to approve the current draft to move forward to the hearing.
Was there anything else that you changed in here that we
No.
discussed or not?
Nope.
No?
So we need a motion to approve the budget as presented.
Draft two.
Draft two, yep.
I would move that we move forward with draft 2 of the budget as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, can I do the warrant articles real quick before privilege of the floor? Just because that would have to do, it ties in with the budget in case anybody had questions.
It's still hanging out there, is it not?
What's that?
Jenny's question is still
Yes.
hanging out there.
So I gave you a copy of last year's warrant, just so you had it for just to look back on, because you have that warrant article that was voted on last year, which was the authorization to retain fund balance. So you do not have to vote on, that would not be another warrant article. It only needs to be voted on once.
Correct. You retain the power, but you don't need to reauthorize it.
Correct. So the new warrant articles are on one page. This says at the top, 2022. Article 1 is just always the reports of agents, auditors, committees, or officers. Article 2 would be the teachers' collective bargaining agreement, which is still within negotiations. So it looks like what we'd have to do if there's an agreement, you would have to approve that right before the hearing, which you did last year, which is a little tight, but we did it right before. That's fine. We can project those numbers if that's ratified. Article 3 is a historical contingency fund of $1,000, just gives us the flexibility in case something comes up within the year. The Article 4 is what Jenny was talking about, the fund balance to capital reserve. So last year you had 50,000 committed. If there was that piece, you can continue to stick with that number or shift it if you'd like. And then the last article is always the operating budget. So most of those are pretty standard, except for Article 4, which is the capital reserve fund. So I didn't know if you wanted to stick with the 50 or increase or decrease it from there.
We don't, do we know what the balance of the capital reserve fund is at this point?
Do you have that on you, Dan?
I can pull it up.
Yep.
Just take me a second, please.
Yeah, no, all right. My only question is that we voted to defer spending, was it $230,000 on library improvements, something along those lines?
Yeah, a little higher.
300,000,
Yes, yep.
something like that. And I would like to continue to fund the capital reserve so
you're right.
that when we have anticipated expenses, you know, like the roof project that we had to raise $100,000 for, and that was just a recoding. You know, I do think it's important to continue funding the capital reserve. My only question is at what level in that, knowing what's there might help us understand that.
So to answer your question, at year-end 6/30/2021, and these are your audits complete, so the number was $56,722. You also have the $50,000 that will be going in this month from last year's fund balance. Now the tax rate has been issued. So that'll take it to about $106,700 plus any interest that's earned this year. So at the end of the current fiscal year, without any additional action, for the contemplated article you talked about, I'm projecting the fund balance will be just under $107,000 in that capital reserve.
So do we want to use that amount, or do we, if we need to have that?
I wasn't
50
suggesting
if we
drawing
are-
off, but I was suggesting adding to it. And the other question is how much.
Yeah, that's fine, that counts.
I would say let's go forward with 50,000.
With 50?
Yeah. My only question is that, you know, it's probably not going to be enough for a capital project, but if we're putting some away, we can still raise the rest from revenue if we have a big project. If we need to, you know, we can put it to the voters to raise revenue if we need to. But I don't think it hurts us to have something there if there were an emergency or to offset capital expenses.
So we would have this bottom line, and then these are all additional spending, correct?
Yes.
Well, the 50,000 is currently worded, wouldn't be, it's spending, but it's not additionally raised through taxation.
Correct.
It's money that's already been raised and just not spent in the current year's budget. It's part of the
Okay,
fund.
now I understand, okay, all right.
Basically, if there's
Yeah.
50,000 left over at the end of the budget, we'll
Yeah.
take 50,000 of it back, the rest of it goes back to the voters. If I understand it correctly.
So I would make that motion.
Well,
So,
Or not. We have to make a motion for all these.
so you can approve all the warrant articles as written except for, you know, the teachers' collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
And if you want to stick with 50, you could just approve the rest of them as is.
I'm okay with
Is there a motion to approve warrant articles as written, except for number 2?
Yep.
That's what I would make a motion for.
that. Yep.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
All in favor?
All right. Great. Thank you.
COVID update.
Did you want to do privilege of the floor?
Do you want to do it now or after the discussion?
I could do COVID update, and then you could do it right after.
Yeah, why don't we go through
This
all
way, if anybody has questions about either of them, we can answer them. COVID update, there's been a number of cases that were reported to us today from prior to Christmas or holiday vacation to this morning. So there has been kind of a backlog of parents that have just kind of let us know they did have COVID, they're coming back tomorrow, they've been out for 10 days. So in the press release today, we did put out all those numbers. We typically don't put on the dashboard numbers when kids aren't in school, but I thought it would be helpful for parents to actually see the number of cases being reported. So those numbers that were out in the press release today will not be on the dashboard. The dashboard only reflects when students have been in the building.
Okay, so that's what I was sort of curious. So those are just the reporting as of today, but they haven't been in the building, but-
No, none of the kids have been in school during the whole holiday break. So, for instance,
Or today.
Or today, right. So the ones that were reported today, that were in today, or it's mostly, there were a few athletes that tested positive. So they've been in the building the entire holiday break, so they are on the dashboard if there were cases. Does it make sense? I just thought it was important to report those numbers that were reported to us, because I know that folks do know that kids are home and people are dealing with it. So I do expect an increase. The biggest piece I'm concerned about is staff being out. It's just something that we're just going to have to take day by day. There's a shortage of subs in general, so we're in better shape than many districts, but it's just if you happen to have 5 or 6 teachers go out at once, then it can impact us pretty quickly. As far as I'm not planning to shift to remote for COVID, and I think the only time I would consider either probably closing if staff are sick. That's the only time if I was really short-staffed, which has been kind of what I've been saying the entire year is what we're going to do with that piece.
Has there been a shift from the governor's office on that?
No, they're in talks right now with that law that we had talked about earlier in the year about no remote, and then they're thinking about conditional remote. The spirit of the Board of Education is really only as absolutely necessary. They really don't want to see schools shutting down completely, to do more of a targeted approach. So if a second grade classroom needed to go remote, then do that piece. I think that can be just as confusing sometimes, so we're going to try to stay open as much as possible and not have to do that. It would only be done if it was absolutely we couldn't open. So.
I guess I was under the impression that we couldn't do it, that we can do it.
You can, so that was the original message that we were told from the state. And then it actually wasn't approved, but the spirit of what they want is that they don't want remote.
Okay.
So.
Who would have approved that? I don't understand that.
So it's a rule by the Board of Education. So they're in discussions right now to see what they need to do, if they need to make it more specific or anything. We've been okay doing what we've been doing. So I'm pretty confident in that piece. The CDC, I think it was New Year's Eve, changed their guidance around isolation. We have not changed, so I'm sure many of you have heard that they've changed to 5 days instead of 10 days if somebody tests positive. All of our schools adopted the New Hampshire Department of Health guidelines, which still remains at 10 days. I sent out an email today from Dr. Chan that they're holding off on adopting the CDC isolation guidelines, and they're sticking with 10. We're required to follow the New Hampshire Department of Health guidelines. We have a call with them on Wednesday. I'm not sure what they're going to do with it. I know that they're looking at a publication that the CDC might be coming out with. to see how that looks in New Hampshire. Because what's different in New Hampshire is that you cannot ask children their vaccination status. And we have a couple of other laws that kind of contradict what some of the guidance is from CDC. So if a child, right now the guidance with CDC is 5 days home and then required masking. There's many schools in New Hampshire that have recommended, so the enforcing that, you can't do it, nor can we talk about, some of testing is involved too, mandatory testing that might come into play, which is also something that New Hampshire can't do. So they're going to see how they're going to New Hampshireize it, I guess, is the best thing I have right now. But they're in the process, as of now though, if a child or a student or a staff member tests positive, it's 10 days from the test or when symptoms started.
But that's unlimited. The 5 days is only for people that are completely asymptomatic, from what I read. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I don't know what percentage of our population is positive with 0 symptoms, right? I don't know practically how much difference that 5-day thing makes from the CDC.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're kind of waiting on guidance. Wednesday's the call. I'm not sure if they're going to have guidance at this point, but right now all of our mitigation strategies remain the same from our opening plan at the beginning of the year. Any questions on COVID?
Is there any talk about distribution of tests and the government, New Hampshire, getting them to any of our schools?
So originally there was that SAS testing that I brought to the board a while ago, but they, you would administer the tests here, but I would love if they gave us boxes of them, we could just give them away, but it would be helpful. Testing is becoming a little bit harder. I know I sent an email out a while ago on tests that were free, that they were sold out within a day. There's more tests available on Department of Health now that are PCR tests, so you can order those as well. I have heard of some difficulty getting PCR tests pretty quickly, but nothing yet because this is our first day back. But so not yet. We haven't heard of them shipping us just boxes to give away, but who knows? Any other questions on COVID? We plan on moving forward with all activities as scheduled, including winter program.
Only if you know when it's going to be over.
Yeah, I know.
I'd like to know that.
Me too.
I move that.
Yeah.
Any other business?
I do not have any other business.
Consent items, claims, and payments.
Oh, you know what?
Privilege and floors.
I need to pass this around.
Thank you for level funding the budget because my taxes are very high.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring this up, and it might be a non-issue. So our subs have to pay $48.25 to get fingerprinted with a shortage of subs, and it's only brought to my attention because Trevin is applying to be a sub, which we will totally write the check for $48.25. But I didn't know if that's a deterrent for some subs when they go to sign up, if that $50 is an issue. And I didn't know if COVID relief or something could help cover that cost until we're out of this cycle. I just thought it was worth bringing up because I didn't realize that that was the case until my own child went to go pick up paperwork. But it might be a non-issue. I just don't know if that's a
So
deterrent.
can I ask, remind me, when do we cover that? Or when does the school district cover that? Is it for parent volunteers?
It's for volunteers.
Okay, so parents are volunteering for the ski program, they have to do whatever.
I guess I'm just bringing it to your attention. It can be a non-issue and continue to have that be paid. I just, with the sub shortage, I didn't know if that was a deterrent or not. This is the first I've ever encountered it.
How many new funds, new subs do we deal with on a regular basis? I mean,
Anyone I can find. I haven't had anyone else it's never been raised as an issue to me before.
Right,
Yeah.
This is the first time it's,
But it might be,
I've had people who have opted out once they hear that would be a deterrent to employment. So it's also a little bit of a gate to say, we are going to do a background check. It does matter. And, you know, if you're going to put yourself on the list and we're going to go through the process of doing the background check and that process that, you know.
and I don't disagree with the
Yes,
background check.
yes, yeah.
I'm just saying it's $50 when they get paid 90, you're almost essentially working a half a day. It just, I don't know, it just seems,
It seemed like it would be a little bit of busy work to track, but it would seem that we could, I mean, it wouldn't be a budget buster to reimburse a new sub the first time they sub for us in the district if it's their first time subbing. But I can't imagine we're gonna be flooded with them either. You know, if we're paying, you know, $90, 90, is it,
For teachers.
for teachers?
But no, we raised it
Paras-
to,
So most of our subs work in multiple districts.
Right.
So when they sign up, they'll check off which schools they want to sub in. So no one belongs to us, so wouldn't,
Is this something that should
So-
have been brought up at the SAU meeting, so that there would be an SAU-wide policy?
if somebody just checked off Plymouth, then you can
Right,
talk about that piece, but
right. I mean, it's almost like, you know,
It's up to-
if there's somebody who's willing to sub in the district, we'll cover their first time, their background fee check or something, but
It's a one-time thing?
I wouldn't want to have to.
Let's-
But what you're trying to say is that Plymouth would pay, but then they can go sub in Camden.
Or sub anywhere.
and None of them are gonna pay
Right.
for it.
It would set up a situation where anybody who wanted to sub it within the SAU would want to sub in Plymouth first because they get their background check covered, and then they could sub other places.
and maybe this is backwards, I'd almost rather see some of the volunteers pay instead of a substitute company in the district that's coming to work for
Yeah.
a fee. But it's just a discussion, we can let it go today, but I just wanted to bring it to the attention though.
Yeah.
Because a parent isn't gonna mind paying for the $48 for the
Right.
9 years they're here volunteering, where a sub, you're hiring to work in the building.
Yeah.
And just, anyway, thank you for
But for the
listening.
parent volunteering, they're volunteering here specifically, they're not gonna be in 7 other schools.
Good point.
I think we could.
you could always think about it and take it under
Think
advisement.
about it and not think anything,
I think it's a great question. I don't know that we have a great answer.
Right.
So thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it either until just recently, so I thought, if we're short in subs, maybe we should be thinking about it. Anyway.
Correspondence?
I do not have any
Is there
correspondence.
anybody online who has a question?
No.
Anybody, if anybody online audience has, would like to address the board, raise your hand.
While they're thinking, I do have a quick question. Is there any issues lately with the buses and staffing of the bus situation, or does that seem to be okay right now?
Everyone's thin, I
Okay.
will tell you. We are managing in the buildings and on the buses and in the lunchrooms, but
Okay.
it's,
Yeah.
It's-
Okay,
we're okay.
okay. I-
You're not short any bus drive, no.
no, in fact, they volunteered an extra bus and a bus driver for us for winter program to help us. So I don't want to advertise that to other schools.
Just
but
did.
Thank you.
I will say I try to take care of
We
my
kinda kicked
drivers a couple times a year.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to go into non-public.
So moved.
Hold on a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.